Okay, so you get to hear me, or I get to stop talking about aerobic training, and we're going to talk about anaerobic training with this video. So here are the three outcomes for this one. Sorry, I went through those really quick, or at least didn't have them stay up for very long. All right, so anaerobic training is a type of training where you're looking to improve your force production, and you do this by doing activities that require near maximal force. So basically anything that I don't do. When it comes to anaerobic training, the energy systems that you're relying on shouldn't be a surprise that it's ATP, PCR, and glycolytic systems because these are short, very intense bouts of exercise, whereas the oxidative system takes a little while to ramp up, and by the time it's ramped up, you're already done doing anaerobic activities. And so, unlike aerobic capacity, it's really difficult to measure anaerobic capacity. There isn't a VO2 max like a test for anaerobic capacity. Additionally, there's debate or discussion, or it depends on what you're looking for. What's more important, to have average force production over a short period of time, or just to be able to determine what peak force production is during an activity? And so that also affects what tests you might want to use. Now, there's three tests that are used to get an idea of aerobic capacity, but they actually measure very different things. And so you've got the Wingate test, which if you haven't done lab, you will do soon in lab, the critical power test, and then a maximal accumulated oxygen deficit test. Each of these tests are different, and we'll talk more about them next week. Now, when it comes to muscular adaptations, remember that high-intensity activities use type 2 fibers, both type 2A and type 2X, but it's also important to remember type 1 fibers are being recruited because type 1 fibers are always being recruited. Based on the size principle, we recruit those small motor units first and ramp up to the biggest ones. But anaerobic training doesn't really have any effect on type 1 fibers, but it does improve the cross-sectional, or increase is probably a better word for that, cross-sectional area of both type 2A and type 2X fibers. All right. It's also possible, research is mixed, but it is possible that certain types of training might actually reduce the percentage of type 1 fibers that you have. There is some research out there that suggests that your type 1 fibers might actually turn into type 2A. But this, again, is with sprint training, and it's not seen necessarily in resistance training. These anaerobic training, as mentioned a minute ago, it does alter ATP, PCR, and the glycolytic systems. It makes them more efficient, so you can generate ATP quickly. But there's really no change in the oxidative systems, again, because these activities really don't last long enough to do anything or to get a lot of benefit from the oxidative systems. So with the ATP PCR system, what happens is we're increasing the activity of creatine kinase. But the research is really mixed as to how long these activities need to be to get these benefits. And so you'll see some things that are doing these really intense activities for anywhere from 6 to 60 seconds. 30 seconds kind of seems to be the sweet spot, but again, it's really mixed to best know to know what duration is best. Ultimately, what's happening is you're increasing your muscular strength, so you're going to be able to generate more power during these short, intense bouts of exercise. With the glycolytic system, anaerobic training increases the activity of several enzymes. Remember, glycolysis is 10 steps, but the one that's kind of important to remember is that it increases the activity of PFK. If you remember from, I think it was week 2, PFK is phosphofructokinase, is the rate-limiting enzyme for glycolysis. Research here to get these benefits in the glycolytic system seem to need to last about 30 seconds in length, but there's some research out there that shows that 60 seconds in length, there's no real benefit. And again, looking at the literature, and if you look at the stuff in your book, it seems that the changes that are occurring are just directly strength related, not necessarily related to the ATP production. And we'll talk about these a little bit more in class. So at the end of this lecture, can you do the following 3 things? And these are just the same objectives that we had at the beginning, or that I showed you at the beginning of the lecture.